Japan is increasing its military spending, looking for its army to regain its position as one of the most powerful in the world, in order to guarantee the security of its territory amid regional tensions with China, North Korea, Russia, and the threat of the invasion of Taiwan, one of its main allies, thus breaking with the peaceful position that it had maintained since the end of the Second World War. But will their economy be able to adapt to this change in direction? His defeat in World War II marked the beginning of a new era for Japan, with the dissolution of his empire and the beginning of a new society based on a new constitution, framed in the definitive renunciation of war and use of force as a means of dissolving international disputes. This part of the Constitution, although it was later reinterpreted to allow military spending for defensive purposes, has served as a ceiling for Japan to maintain a peaceful stance and a defense focus during the decades following World War II, with the United States serving as additional support. Thanks to this, Japan was able to focus completely on its economy and become one of the most prosperous and wealthy nations in the world despite its limited natural resources and having been destroyed in the war. But its military position took a significant turn under former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who saw China as a threat to Japan. China's economic and military growth, its proximity, and the historical rivalry between the two nations worried Abe, especially considering Japan's vulnerability due to the concentration of its cities and low offensive capacity to respond to military aggression.
And if there was a conflict, all of the Japanese home islands are in range of any number of Chinese weapon systems, and regardless of whether the Americans are involved or not, Chinese cities are less vulnerable than Japanese ones. The Japanese topography is a lot more rugged, and so you get a city on a little footprint of land surrounded by mountains, and then you have to get over those mountains to get to the next city. So all of Japan's cities do double duty as energy centers and military centers and population centers. So in any sort of conflict scenario, the damage to the Japanese system would be extreme.
And although Abe left office in 2020 and was assassinated in 2022, current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who belongs to the same party as the former Prime Minister, has maintained the same line and shared the intention of increasing military spending to guarantee Japan's national security. And he is not alone in this, because Russia's invasion of Ukraine marked an awakening for many nations, which began to increase their military spending as a way of deterring any enemy from intruding on their territory, with Asian countries such as South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, and India being a few examples, for reasons similar to Japan, who has changed its military policy seeking to increase its offensive capacity as part of this deterrence, both with preventive attacks and with the capacity to respond if another country attacks it. And Japan has approved an increase in its military spending to 2% of its economy, which will make it the third country with the highest military spending in the world, after the United States and China. This military spending will be focused on the development of sixth-generation fighter jets together with the UK and Italy, the development of combat drones, the increase in cyber defense, the production of missiles and missile defense, and the acquisition of 500 Tomahawk missiles to the United States.
The whole idea of the Tomahawks is you get a weapons system with a range of 1,000 miles with the basic version, with a 1,000-pound warhead. And the missiles tend to fly just a few dozen of feet above the ground, making them very difficult to detect, much less to intercept. So we're not talking here about these 20 grand a pop Iranian drones that only fly 100 miles an hour and only carry a warhead that's 50 pounds or less, and so they have to throw dozens of them at any target to do any damage. No. These are things that use GPS location that can hit within a few feet of what they're aiming for and just blow it to smithereens.
Japan has also sought to strengthen its military relations with South Korea, Australia, and India, eventually forming the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad, a group initially made up of Japan, Australia, India, and the United States, and now also with South Korea, New Zealand, and Vietnam, with the objective of sharing information, conducting military exercises and maintaining a strategic position in the Indo-Pacific. These alliances, as well as the investments that Japan is planning, have generated tensions with China, which has called for Japan to maintain its peaceful position, assuring that they are not a threat to the Japanese, and that the only thing these measures do is to escalate tensions between the two nations.
Tensions have already been escalated very much by China daily. It's a daily phenomenon that China is conducting very much coercive action around Japanese territorial waters. And Russia, it should go without saying that Russia is building up its arsenal and military capacity also on the eastern end of its huge landmass. So it's a belated response, and much, much more has to be done.
Japan is also in dispute with Russia over the Kuril Islands in the north of the country, which were occupied by Stalin at the end of World War II, while Putin has increased Russia's military position on these islands that hold a strategic position and could have natural gas and crude oil reserves. But the ambitious plan for the revival of its army raises the question, how can Japan pay for all this? Military spending is complex and will always be controversial. If external or internal threats that could damage the order or sovereignty of a country materialize, then everyone will be happy with high military spending that allows the army to have a better response capacity. If, on the contrary, they do not materialize, then the spending on equipment, salaries, and facilities could have gone to infrastructure, education, health, and other elements with a better social return for the country. And that is why it is not surprising that the spending of 2% of the economy on defense, which NATO maintains as a guideline and which Japan, although it is not a member, has decided to adopt, is not complied with by the majority of its members despite pressure from the United States. And beyond the effect that this spending has on the world economy, it is the fact that the situation is not unique to Japan, and more countries have considered increasing their defense spending, which could be at the cost of world economic growth for diverting funds from other projects. And this is why Japan seeks to focus not only on increasing its spending, but also on developing its military industry, and part of the budget will go to subsidies for this. Japan is one of the most technologically developed countries in the world and has the potential to become a net exporter in the sector. But while it succeeds, it will seek to finance this expense through taxes, which of course is not that simple. Japan's economy has been stagnant for decades, and its aging population already puts a heavy tax burden on young people. Japan has also seen a sharp weakening of its currency in the last year, which makes energy imports and the eventual purchase of military equipment more expensive. Finally, there is its debt. Japan has a debt of more than 260% of its economy, which limits its room for maneuver. All this means that the investments and developments that Japan seeks may not be sustainable for a long time or be at the cost of the little economic growth that the country maintains, especially if during 2023 an economic crisis materializes that puts extra pressure on citizens and the nation's budget. And do you think Japan is making the right decision? Are China and Russia a real threat to Japan? I would like to know your opinion. See you next time.